All right, I think we are live, and looks like Rob is already in here. So, Rob, thanks for being quick on the draw. Hopefully, you could hear me all right. It's been a few weeks since my last stream. I think the last one, if I'm not mistaken, was prior to Christmas or definitely prior to New Year's Eve. So, I believe this is the first stream of 2026. And I figured, yeah, there's lots of stuff in the news. There's all sorts of stuff with ICE going on. There's political stuff I could definitely talk about. Scott Adams sadly passed away. I don't know if it was early this morning or last night. So please pray for the repose of Scott Adams' soul. And I thought I would talk about a little bit about Scott Adams, and actually going back to the first time that I really got wind of he was starting to get into politics many years ago. And this was back when I actually had a blog. May 12th, 2016, I think, is the first time I talked about Scott Adams on my blog. So I figured, all right, well, I'll just cover Scott. And I was actually pleasantly surprised at the time that we were basically on the same page in terms of the election. So figured we could go back in the time machine and talk about that sort of stuff. And then I don't believe in coincidence. So before I go to bed at night, I'm saying my little prayers and all that sort of stuff. Usually I'll just do one more cycle through social media, and I'll try and see, if anyone has any questions or if something new pops up. And so I have a little circuit that I go through. And I saw one of my old videos way back in the day. Again, long time ago, 8 years ago, had somebody commenting on one of my Max Bemis's videos. So if you don't remember, way back in the day, Max Bemis was the one who was doing Moon Knight, and then he would just go off on the readers, and he was saying, oh, okay, well, I effing hate you guys, and you can, Matt Bemis was like saying you could suck my butt and all of this sort of stuff to people that were reading his books. They didn't have anything wrong with him. Anyway, I went through, and Mr. Grohovac, thanks for tuning in, appreciate it. I went through and I watched this again, and it's actually interesting, again, in retrospect, to look this over. And then at the very end of it, follow with me, I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere with this. So at the very end of it, there's like a little outro. Let's see if I could play it here. Get the Jim Lees out there in DC. Usually I would do this thing where I would cover everything, then there'd be an outro. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And then like a little jokey thing. See ya. I don't know if you could hear that. The volume is not so hot. You guys still here? It's closing time, man. Listen, my friends, don't spend all night with Max Bemis, because he hates you. In fact, he hates you. Listen, I gotta go to bed. Just know that your friends, myself, Diversity in Comics, Cap Cummings, and the rest will always be there for you. We love you. Till then. So anyways, if you didn't hear that correctly, the joke at the end was like the little piano music. It's you're in the piano bar or whatever. It's closing time. It's 3 a.m. or whatever it is. And they're just letting people know, hey, it's time to go or whatever. We already had last call, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, hey, again, this is 8 years ago. I was like, I'll always be here for you with Captain Cummins and Diversity in Comics. Well, so again, this guy, he leaves a comment about Max Bemis. His life is in shambles now. His wife left him. He put out 30 minutes of schizophrenic ranting under the guise of an album from his band. He is getting what he deserves. Now, that aside, again, I go back, I watch this, says, we'll always be there for you, blah, blah, blah. Then this comes up in my feed. This is Diversity in Comics, now Comics Matter. and he apparently put out a video where he says that he's essentially, for all intents and purposes, sort of like, I don't want to say closing down the channel, but it's sort of like he's scaling back, or he won't be around that much. He doesn't really have anything to say anymore, blah, 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 blah. So, I just thought it was really interesting. Again, I don't believe in coincidence. I don't know if you, people that follow my feed know that I really like Carl Jung and Jungian psychology, and he actually covers synchronicities. And he actually has there's a book that of his work into synchronicity and what exactly it means and the nature of them and all this sort of stuff, where it's like sometimes things happen. And if you tried to come up with some sort of criteria for figuring out the probability of that thing happening, the probability of it happening would be so large that it actually, it doesn't even make any sense. Like it would be so rare that even accounting for the fact that you're like, okay, this would most likely happen in this case, but then it's like even beyond that, and you're just like, no, the probability is actually so small that we have to take into account that something else is at play here. So with that in mind, what are the chances that out of the blue, after 8 years, some random guy comments on my Max Bemis video where I say, we'll always be here for you, me, Captain Cummings, Diversity in Comics, on the same day, if I'm not mistaken, that Richard puts out a video saying, actually, no, I won't always be here. I'm kind of out of here, and I'm scaling back and whatever. So it just got me thinking about like the past 8 years and where we've been and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, speaking of ice stuff and like the transformation of like Richard from this like allegedly conservative guy into this dude that's like, randomly going on all sorts of anti-ice rants and all this stuff. And it's just like very, it's very strange. And that was the other thing, is sometimes I have readers ask me about, so that's the thing, is like you're almost forever tied to certain individuals, especially going back to 2017 with indie comics and YouTube and stuff like that. So there's no way I can escape it. So when someone like Richard starts going off on these like basically insane anti-ice rants, like he's essentially giving the exact same talking points, I've said this before, as Mark Waid, Heather on Toast. He likes to go off on like Joe Glass, Mags Visaggio. It's exactly the same talking points. And so there's no way that I could escape it. There's always going to be someone down the road that's going to be like, dude, man, what happened to this guy? And then I'm in a very weird position where it's like, part of me doesn't want to talk about it. I don't even know if it's like some sort of like sadness, some sort of like, I don't want to say loyalty to the past, but like you're just like, you want to cut somebody some slack because you're just like, what is going on that he would have this level of a transformation in his 50s. So like it makes sense to me if somebody, like when I was a young man, when I was a teenager, I've said this before, even when I was in the military, I always thought of myself as sort of like a default Democrat, because you grow up with the media, and the media just always tells you that, anybody who's not a Democrat is like a bad person or something. So when I was a young man, my default with it, because I wasn't into politics at all, anything, and you're just like, oh yeah, the Democrats are the good guys, they're the cool guys. And then as time goes on, and then you have to pay taxes and property taxes, and then we could get into the Somali daycare situation. You realize the amount of fraud and waste and abuse in the federal government, and you're essentially paying taxes so a bunch of fraudsters on a scale that's like almost unimaginable can just essentially you're working to fund on some level fraudsters, even though the United States is like in debt, and it's like you could just like keep going down that rabbit hole. But on a certain level, you just become more conservative over time, or things get definitely nuanced. So you wouldn't go from this like hardcore leftist to like, yeah, like right wing when you're like an older man, or right wing when you're an older man, to like just completely flip like 180 onto the other side. And so, like, to me, I'm just like, whenever this sort of stuff gets on my radar, I'm just like, I don't know that I should say stuff. But then a lot of times, well, the thing is, he likes to delete all this sort of stuff, like definitely in his like his little commentary post or whatever here. But for like over a year, maybe like a couple years, he's just gone off on conservatives, saying like conservatives have no place in art. They got to get rid of them, get them out of here. They don't know anything about art, yada, yada, yada. And you're like, okay, well, he's just like, now he's just putting out these bizarro blanket statements about conservatives. Like, at what point in time am I allowed to actually just like, you know, backhand, like rhetorically backhand this guy and be like, dude, you're such a giant hypocrite, and you're just like, you can't just like erase, you know, years and years and years of content and then just like pretend like I've always been Heather Altos, I've always been Joe Glass, really, or whatever. Like, it's just like, so there's this like cognitive dissonance thing going on, and like it's like, again, I don't know. I just like don't like, part of me doesn't want to bring it up, but then that's the other thing. Let's get into this. So Ram, thanks for tuning in. Mr. X, Tagia, thanks for tuning in. There's no way to escape it. It's like you're forever tied to certain individuals in time. And so I'm minding my own business the other day, and I'm getting asked about this new Comics by Perch video. There's no indie community. So then I'm like, oh geez. And I was like, all right. So then it's like, okay, let me check this out. What is this about? So I check it out. And if the person is watching right now, if he comes in, he wants to out himself as the guy who, you know, is the first one to ask me about this video, feel free, but I'm not going to just say your name or whatever. Anyways, I'm asked about this video, and the video, Perch goes into, he's like, he got this anonymous email from somebody who's going off about Iconic Comics and Rippaverse and War Campaign and all of this sort of stuff. He's not going to say who it is. He's just going to say, like, I'm getting this this email about War Campaign and Iconic Comics and Rippaverse and how they're all bad people and this and that and the other thing. Okay. Then, so my reaction was, well, this video is only going to attract people that are going to end up bashing me or Tim or Iconic Comics or Eric July and blah, blah, blah. They will show up in the comments section. And the whole thing is about avoiding drama. But then it's like you're inviting the exact drama by like, I was like, this thing is ready-made. What you're going to do is you're going to get all the comics guys riled up, and then they're going to do a giant stream about it, and they're going to bash Eric July. They're going to bash Iconic Comics, and that's what it's going to do. And I guess on some level, like, you'll benefit from it because your video will get attention. But then, of course, people ask me about it, and then I'm put into a situation where it's like, okay, well, do I just ignore it completely? Do I mention it? Like, to me, it just feels like you're manufacturing the very thing that you're saying that you don't want. And it's like, on some level, like at some point in the video, he is like, you know, a lot of people, like, they go after the Iconic Comics guys, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, well, like, he's sort of, it's like you gave voice to this anonymous person who's just bashing Iconic Comics, and you're inviting people to, like, you're stirring it all up and you're inviting streams, but then you're just saying like, well, people attack them for no reason. Anyway, So then it's like, all right, let's go through here. And where was it? So we go through, and exactly what I said was going to happen happened. So you get one guy here. He goes, the issue with the iconic guys, their main guy wrote night letters. Okay, no, that's just a lie. Confronted EVS over his anti-political book stance. Actually, again, all of this stuff are just like total like distortions of the truth. It's not even. Then used a sock puppet alt to harass people. Gross and insecure. Likely why Lim quit videos, fear of conflict in ratios, or maybe he just, or maybe Tim wanted to actually concentrate on his books, and maybe he realized that there's a bunch of psychotic people like this out there, and that it just wasn't worth his time to be in this sort of YouTube ecosystem with a bunch of people that are just, in many respects, psychopaths. The internet would move on if he'd own it, but he pretends it never happens. What? Like, Tim has nothing to do with these people. Tim Lim is immature, insecure, and damaged his reputation as his reputation is so damaged that Timothy Lim was the guest of honor at the Japan Comic Art Expo 2025 winner guest of honor, along with all sorts of other people. Here's Stanley, Derek, Kendrick, I'll mispronounce that, Leos, myself, and a bunch of other artists. Here you go, guest of honor in Tokyo. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to say that Tim damaged his reputation with people that lie about him on a regular basis and have done so for roughly a decade now, then yeah, I guess so. But Tim didn't damage his reputation at all, because Tim didn't do anything to these people. They're just gullible, I'm sorry to say it, gullible losers who will believe what YouTubers say with either zero evidence whatsoever or cherry-picked out of context things that are, again, put together in a way to put out this like bizarro warped mirror of what reality is. And again, you could look at the track record of Iconic Comics and Rippaverse over the course of many years. And if you're so dumb that you cannot see, you can't compare the actual track record of book after 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 show after show after show after show after show after show, internationally and domestically. If you can't put those two things together, merch after merch after merch after merch after merch after merch, if you still think that the ridiculous lies going back to like 2017 about Tim, who is just focused on putting out multiple books, multiple IPs, multiple forms of merchandise, going to shows, literally putting on Bell County Comic Con with Iconic Comics, like 40,000 plus people or whatever it was last year. If you still just blindly believe what people who hate Tim have to say about him, you're kind of a ridiculous individual who shouldn't be taken seriously. But anyways, again, blah 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 blah. Okay. Let's see. You're talking about Bunnyman, right? How long is New CG going to cry about 2018 Bunnyman? Who hasn't even talked about you for years? Again, that is true. All right, keep going down. There was one that was like cracking me up somewhere. Where was it? I just saw it right before I started up this stream. There was somebody that was like basically saying that he hates my guts. Oh, here we go. So yeah, it's the same one. This guy, thank you for saying this. It didn't seem like people willfully forgot about this. Well, not everybody is constantly like going through stuff from 8 years ago, holding on to like grudges from YouTube from 2017, and like the exact wording of the lies. Like, you're just like, you want to talk about people with alt accounts, like I wonder who actually has this particular account, because it seems very specific in the type of thing that only like in a very personal way that you would like remember it. I've been saying F iconic and that little bitch Doug Ernst ever since this was exposed. Let's see. He adds, it's also while I'll never watch Thinking Critical again. That idiot not only defended this cowardly behavior, but also heavily implied that he was gay with Doug. Again, you want to talk about alt accounts or whatever. Now, here's the funny thing. Doug Ernst was exposed. Doug Ernst, gay with Wes, allegedly. Who said all of this sort of stuff? Well, it was Ethan Van Sciver. And the funny thing about that is as we've covered here before, where is the videos, the live streams where Ethan tried to frame my medical mission to the Philippines, giving medical care to poor people who couldn't afford it, as some sort of trafficking sort of thing with Wes, or some sort of swinger situation of Wes. It doesn't exist anymore. It was taken down. As far as I know, maybe he'll put it up now. Who knows? But it disappeared. And it's an interesting thing, because I actually kept some of the receipts from that. I'd have to find them in my laptop, because speaking of Scott Adams, it was like, if I ever get Scott Adams FU money, I want all this sort of stuff for a lawsuit. Just in case. So I've actually just kept receipts of all this sort of stuff, of all these lies, hours and hours of lies about me, Tim. Anytime somebody points me in the direction of it, if I see it, boom, because I know they delete it. Same thing with the comic book cut stuff. Where are all those streams? Flush down the memory hole. So it's very interesting. The only person that was exposed as a liar was Comic Book Hut and all of the other people like Ethan, who forwarded the lies to literally tens of thousands of people, with, again, receipts with people who believe those lies and continue to this day to disseminate those lies. I mean, you want to talk about defamation and proving defamation? All you need are YouTube videos with tens of thousands of views of people who are believing blatant lies about you, who then say that they're not going, they bought your books, but now they're not going to buy your books. And then they go out and they disseminate the lies and all of that sort of stuff. So anyway, the person who pointed me to purchase video, like I said, all it is going to do is going to attract people that are going to continue to disseminate lies about Iconic. And that's exactly what happened. And then I said the other thing that will happen is that Ethan will use it for streaming content to bash Iconic Comics and Rippaverse. And presto changeo, that's exactly what happened. So Perch, thank you for doing a video that brought out all the people that hate Iconic and that are going around saying that when I go on medical missions to the Philippines, I'm really involved in gay swinger action with Wes. I really appreciate that. So thank you for fueling that exactly like I thought. And speaking of fueling, again, this is exactly what happened. Here we go.
Iconic takes a lot of shots from people who are jealous. Nobody thinks of Iconic Comics. I know this is hard for you and for them and for their fans to understand. The reason why nobody thinks about them is because they're not on YouTube. Nobody sees them.
So, this is almost peak delusion at this point. I actually feel sorry for Ethan, and I actually feel sorry for anybody that sort of, speaking of fueling things, fuels this delusion. The idea that nobody reads Iconic Comics when Iconic Comics is being invited as guests of honor to Tokyo Comic Expo winter shows and things like that. Like, again, you have to be completely delusional. Tim and Mark have licensing agreements in Japan where their merchandise for Common America is getting into something like 150 stores. It's essentially the equivalent of Tower Records or Sam Goody back in the day, pop-up shops and all sorts of stuff. So it's just like, the idea that you actually have to be on YouTube, and if you don't exist on YouTube, well, then nobody must be buying your books, right? Because if Comicsgate isn't talking about you, then, well, I guess you just must be a phantom or something like that. That's not how it actually goes. But again, I actually just feel kind of sorry for them at this point. So, but here's the thing. So what they're doing here is, again, using purchase content to for their own content. And what this is what it wants to do is actually get some sort of like angry rise. So then, like, the ideal situation would now be if I was like really angry at this or something, as opposed to just feeling like actually just sorry in just, I don't know, it's like secondhand embarrassment for this sort of thing. But I digress. Okay, so let's go on.
They were here for a while, but they're gone now. And I think they live in Japan now.
So again, it's nice to actually acknowledge that Japanese readers of iconic comics really wanted iconic comics to come as guest of honors at the Japan Comic Art Expo 2025 in Tokyo, where Tim and Mark and myself had a great time for like over a week, basically seeing the sights, meeting readers, going out to lunch, going out to dinner, going to shrines, going to all, grilled meat places out the wazoo, all over the place. Had a great time, and I would really like to go back. So thank you to Ethan for actually pointing out that so many people actually read iconic comics on an international scale that iconic comics is invited to show up into Tokyo to sell books. And while I was in Tokyo, I had a great time. I had the Japanese translation of Soul Finder Demons Match there, got to sell books. I got to sell angels. There was an American there who gave me a challenge coin, and he was with his kid, and he was telling me how he's been a long-time reader. He really appreciates what I'm doing, and just really great. And then also Stephen Cummings was there. He did some Tunnel Hounds work a while ago that I tried to get colored, and then the colorist, speaking of ghosting, the colorist just like ghosted me out of nowhere. He came to me for work, wanted work, I gave him work, and then he ghosted me. So now I have to be like, okay, well, I guess I'm never going to give that guy work again. Like, that's really weird. Like, it's one of those weird things where it's just like, okay, you came to me, you asked me for work, I give it to you, and then not only do you not do it, but then you just go off the radar and you're like not doing it. Like, very, very strange thing. So that's kind of what you have to deal with. So let's continue to watch. Let's see what other weird things are said about iconic comics here.
I think that's where they are. I wouldn't know. I don't know. Nobody cares. They're making comics that are for girls. I've said that before.
Actually, Iconic Comics is making comics for an audience that actually wants them to fly to Tokyo and sell their comic books, and also an American audience that shows up to Bell County Comic Con. Again, 40,000 plus attendees over a weekend. People like Rob here, Dave, Ethereal Dragon, all the other people tuning in. So yeah, Iconic Comics hosting Bell County Comic Con, 40,000 plus people over the course of a weekend. Every single time I've ever done the Bell County Comic Con show, I have sold like gangbusters, even going back to the very first Soul Finder. But now I've got the 4 issues, plus the 2 short stories, plus the pins, plus the rosaries, plus the angel seraphim plushies. So then when you get new people coming in, you have people dropping like $100 and $150 in one fell swoop on Soul Finder stuff, whether it's online at Iconic Comics or it's at Bell County Comic Con or other shows in the United States, or in Japan, things like that. So, I mean, very interesting stuff there. Let's continue to go on to this sort of cope session or whatever you want to call it.
And I'll say it again. If you are a full-grown man who is reading iconic comics, what, Shane? What would you say? There's something wrong with you.
Dude, this is so sad. This is so sad.
There's something wrong with you.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say about iconic is they've taken some weird shots, even at myself.
Constantly taking.
What? Nobody at Iconic ever talks about that guy. What is it even talking about? Like a year ago, somebody sent me a link with this guy, and he was with Ethan, and they were saying that essentially Iconic Comics was probably paying Rippaverse for promotion or something like that. Again, no one's ever even talked about this guy. And now he's saying that people are taking weird shots at him. Like, I suppose like they would like turn me actually being like, what are you talking about into a shot? So, okay.
Shots at us. And then
What?
going, whoa, why won't they leave us alone?
What?
And we're just like, what the hell are you guys doing? And the only thing I say in response is, we don't care about Iconic because they're not competing with us, because the comics that they make are for weird people. I'll say weird people.
Weird people. So weird. Yeah, the 40,000 plus attendees at Bell County Comic Con and everybody who showed up at Japan Comic Art Expo 2025 in Tokyo. Yeah, it's just totally weird people, I guess. Let's see. Your boy Zach Matters. Shut up, Doug. ICE agents are bad guys. So yeah, whoever started the your boy Zach account or whatever, it is very sad that Richard has essentially become the rhetorical equivalent of Joe Glass and Mags Visaggio. Oh well. Let's see what else we got here.
Nice, but what I really mean to say is something else. Okay?
People are like, well, why aren't you? But they're in Japan. They got their books in Japan, Shane. Why aren't you putting your books in Japan? Probably because I'm not drawing a manga knockoff.
Oh,
Like I'm not, there's a little bit of that. I mean, they're sliding in on the shelf just because they're.
So now Common America is a manga knockoff. In fact, it's such a manga knockoff that the Japanese people actually love it and wanted Tim and Mark to come as a guest of honor at their show after they were buying Common America licensed products in shops across Japan. Does that make sense to you? All right, you square that circle for me, everybody. Because again, sounds like a giant cope session here.
Trying to, be that product in Japan, and if that's what they want to do. Good going. That's not my ambition.
Yeah.
That and everybody uses.
And it's funny, the music. If you listen to the music in the background, is sort of this like almost like it's this 80s like sad whimsical stuff, and so it accentuates the cope of this particular segment.
Uses that as a gotcha, like why aren't you? And it's like I don't know. That's not what I set forth to do with my book. That wasn't that, and that I don't even know. I mean, are they doing that well? I see some of their.
I don't know, man. I got some Iconic comics. I didn't put them in Japan. I put them in garbage.
So he did. So he had the Iconic comic books, and he didn't. And he put them in the garbage. That's a really good play on the words there, Ethan. Good job there. Yeah, he's a wordsmith, total wordsmith.
Not Japan, garbage can, and because they are shit. Let's get back to how we don't have a community. I mean, we got to finish this fucking video.
Dude, again, so Perch, if you're watching, man, Thank you for feeding right into what Ethan wanted, which was to be able to go off on an extended rant on iconic comics and or whatever. And actually maybe purchase playing some sort of like, I don't know, 4D sort of whatever, 3 chess sort of situation, because he knows that whatever we just watched right here was just like two guys in a basement just having unresolved issues about Eric July and iconic comics doing quite well without them and without their whole quote unquote community and all of that sort of stuff. So if you want to know why guys like this are constantly looking for perch videos so they could go on these rants about iconic and Rippaverse, it's because there's a loop that hasn't been closed. So what they thought once upon a time was, okay, in 2017, we're going to lie about Timothy Lim and Mark and all these other guys. We're going to lie about Doug. We're going to smear these guys. We're going to use whatever we can. And that will hurt them. We're going to tear them down to make ourselves look bigger. And bad things are going to happen. Well, history, again, has shown that's actually not the case. Many people that leave the orbit of these dudes actually do quite well for themselves. And so it's like it causes some sort of cognitive dissonance where you're like, I need to go back and I got to rewrite the story. I got to go back and figure out a script to tell my audience that would justify my behavior towards these individuals. I need to diminish their accomplishments, because if I actually acknowledged that iconic comics is doing really, really well, then that destroys the false narrative that I disseminated about them over the course of 7 or 8 years or whatever it's been now. So the brain constantly comes back to these threads that aren't tied. And so that's what's actually happening there. And like I said, you don't even really get mad at it anymore. It's actually, you just sort of like laugh at it and you're just like, oh man, I can't believe it, dude. Like, what are these guys doing? Let me go to the chat here, see what's going on. Let's see. Neostar Productions, thanks for tuning in, man. I'd love to have a Riserman following Japan and Brazil. Ethereal Dragon bought Arcathea series at Bell County Comic Con. Rob says, really a list of books and iconic comics as a genre for all kinds of readers from G-rated to M-rated content. That is true, Rob. Dave is here, says, did you meet Godzilla? Mark and Tim stayed at the Godzilla Hotel. So on some level, I did get to meet Godzilla, and that was pretty cool as well. My hotel was actually a few blocks away from theirs. Let's see. AL says, I guess I'm weird then, in response to Ethan saying only, and Shane or whatever it was, saying only weird people read iconic comics. Dave says, Ethan sounds like a normie talking about any comic book reader. Yeah, that's interesting. So, Ethereal Draken, so when is the iconic comics Flork Rippaverse Freedom Tunes collab? That'd be cool. Let's see. Dave, iconic didn't set out to be popular in Japan, but they still did it. Rob, well, we have to remember both Ethan and Shane are comic creators of a different generation. Let's see. What community is left over in CG? That's the real question. Yeah, I mean, how do I say this? They're sort of boxed in because it's like you essentially just took a blowtorch to all of your different relationships with various creators in Comicsgate over the years. And some people were burned and they just like were like, whatever. And they're just like, you know what? I'm out of here. And some people actually left indie comics altogether. And then the other ones, like I said, whether it was Eric or myself or Tim or Mark or others, just went on and kept doing their thing without paying any mind. Like, all right, well, who cares? We don't really need those guys. And that's the thing, is like they need to convince themselves that YouTube is essential to selling books. I am here to tell you, YouTube is not essential to selling books. Does the do you use the tool or does the tool use you? You're actually in a really bad situation if you are so dependent on YouTube that if they decide to take your channel out on a whim, because they've done that to many, many, many people over the years, you're screwed, dude. So what I did very early on was make sure that I was never going to be dependent on YouTube, never dependent on X, never dependent on WordPress blog or whatever. It was sort of like I'm creating multiple avenues for readers to access me so I could continue to sell Demon's Match, Seraphim plushies, Noctis Terrari, vinyl records, rosaries, all sorts of stuff. But then on top of that, so there's the multiple social media roads that all lead back to Soul Finder. But then there's multiple products that are also their own roads. So some people are just looking for rosaries and they come across Jack Posobiec or whoever giving the rosaries to Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, all sorts of people. And then they're like, "Oh, that looks cool. Where do I get that?" And then they eventually find out that it's at Iconic Comics. And they literally go and they buy the rosaries. Like I said this on previous streams, I've sold upwards of like $50,000 or $60,000 at least worth of rosaries over the years. And every time I sell them, I just recycle that back into buying more rosaries. The same with the plushies. I was down in Bell County Comic Con last year and was selling rosaries like left and right. I could just like, and it's a non-denominational thing where it doesn't matter. Like you don't need to be Catholic to actually be fascinated by the Seraphim. You can be Jewish, you could be Baptist, you could be evangelical, you could be Latter-day Saints, you could be whatever. Everybody is fascinated. You could be an atheist. They're fascinated by the Seraphim for whatever reason. So I'm giving people multiple avenues to get back to Soul Finder. You don't need YouTube. Way back in the day, John Malin was telling people that, oh, you shouldn't start a crowdfunding campaign unless you have 10,000 followers on YouTube and blah, 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 blah. Like all this like really bizarre stuff where it's like, how do you know the individual situation? Like I understand if you were just giving like general advice, like, hey, you need to make sure that you have enough like followers across social media that are actually going to be able to be translated into like readers and people who actually back your book. Like that is a broad enough statement where you're like, yeah, that makes sense to tell somebody that. But to start telling people like, unless you have 10,000 YouTube subscribers, then you should. If I listened to John Malin, Soul Finder Demon's Match would have never existed. And then you could just go down the dominoes of things that would have never existed. So by actually not listening to John Malin and Ethan Van Sciver and those guys back in the day, what you're seeing on the Iconic Comics website, what you're seeing in terms of Tokyo guest of honor type of stuff with Timothy Lim and Mark Pellegrini and Common America and Black Ops and everything that they're doing, for me personally, it would not have existed if I listened to those guys. You actually have to have discernment for yourself, and you need to be able to figure out like, okay, what do I need to do here to be able to take my idea, take my dream, and turn that into reality into the physical world. It's good to listen to advice, but you also have to be able to figure out when someone's giving you bad advice. And so going back to these guys, or like nobody reads them because they're not on YouTube on a daily basis doing 5-hour streams about Eric July. Like when did it become like you have to do 5-hour streams about Eric July in order to sell books? Like that in and of itself tells you how like detached from reality these guys are and how desperate they are to keep their narrative alive. They can't actually see reality as it actually is at this point, because if they did that, they would be forced to apologize to quite a few people that they smeared over the years, or just backtrack. But the problem is with the backtracking, unless you're Richard who's deleting everything at like a really quick pace, there's a social media footprint that we could go through the archaeological dig of social media to be like, hey, you said this and this and this and this and this, but actually the exact opposite happened. Or you predicted this and this and this and this, and actually you were wrong. So you kind of at some point in time have to acknowledge that you were wrong and you made a mistake, and you should own up to it and take responsibility for the fact that you predicted failure, whether it was with Rippaverse or Iconic. These are the same people that said that Eric July would be bankrupt in like 2023 or 2024 or whatever it is, and the guy is still going. So again, and that's the other thing that kind of like annoys me at times. Sometimes these guys go into the financials, and the financials are always like flexible. So when it comes to the things that they want to do, they have all sorts of wiggle room and blah, 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 blah. But then when it comes to Eric July needs to make like $100 million a year to stay in business in their world. I'm obviously, it's hyperbole going on here, but they have a standard, that a financial standard that they want him to meet that is just like ridiculous. When you actually know how much it makes to put out comic books, you're just like, Eric is fine. Eric is going to be able to go on for a long, long time. Even if he had a certain attrition rate with like books or sales or whatever, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be around as long as he wants to go. He's doing fine. And the thing is because he's a business guy, he has shown that he understands how to use cash flow and things like that in order to be able to give himself the space to do what he wants to do. And I mean, we could get into that where these guys all want to like pretend as if they're like, you know, they have this crazy business acumen, but it's like, no, you were the guys that like your whole plan centered around having 10,000 YouTube subscribers. Like that was your big plan. Like you got to have YouTube subscribers. And you're like, that's not a strategy. That's just like you just saying stuff and hoping for the best. So let's see. They don't count sales after the campaign closes. Yeah, no, that's the other sort of thing. It's like, so I told people before, there's an old stream. I don't know if it's still up, but Ethan said it really bothered him. I think that may have been the exact quote, quote unquote, really bothered him, that he didn't know exactly how much I was selling because I haven't been doing the crowdfunds. The last crowdfund I did was 2019 with Demon's Match. And then ever since then, I've just been putting the books out on the Iconic Comics website. So you can say whatever you want about me, but you can't deny that I've been able to raise the capital necessary to make rosaries, mugs, plushies, 4 volumes of Soul Finder, 2 short stories, all of, pins, go to shows all over the United States and now internationally to Tokyo. Like, I obviously know enough about finances to be able to do the things that I want to do and live the lifestyle that I want to live without having to go to crowdfunding and saying like, hey guys, we're going to Tokyo. Maybe we should have a crowdfund for this. Can we raise enough money for the Iconic Comics Tokyo trip or whatever? It's just like, no. Who do you see in Iconic Comics that is has shown that they don't know how to handle money? We know for a fact that Tim and Mark and Eric Canetti and myself and the other guys seem to have a pretty firm grasp of how to be able to put out books on a consistent basis over the course of many years. So, yeah. Let's see. Neostar Productions. One of these days I'll have to order a rosary. Yeah, man. That would be... I have my own reasons for that. On a spiritual level, I highly recommend it. Let's see. Ethereal Dragon. He isn't DC or Marvel who needs to make lots of money to cover their production costs. Let's see. What's up? Did you pull up Zach's post about ICE? Ethan was mad about it. I did say that your boy Zach here, he put out a video saying that he was essentially scaling back, and I don't know if he was going to like not do videos anymore, but he essentially said something along the lines of like, it's not going to be the same, or he doesn't really have much to say because comics are wonderful in 2026 and they're so good, and he's just going to talk about them with some friend of his instead of going on to YouTube or something along those lines. But actually, if you go to his post, he's still doing this. The post that I heard that Ethan was upset about is no longer here. So it looks like he was actually deleting his ice posts. So it's not there anymore. So obviously whatever made Ethan mad, he immediately deleted it. So, and again, that's the thing. That's what I was going back to with the Max Bemis stuff is if you're constantly deleting things and then you're acting as if you didn't say the things you said in the deleted videos and the deleted post, you're being dishonest. Like, you don't, like, that's what's like frustrating to me is this essentially attempt to just say like, oh, well, the guy that I was 8 years ago, he never existed. He didn't, because if you just delete those things, you're hoping on a long enough timeline that people will just forget about it or something like that. And actually that leads into like another thing. So again, as I was saying at the start of this, is people sometimes, speaking of books, Matt Weldon got some new inks going on. This is inspired by Dante. You'll get the full rundown when you check out Soul Finder Volume 5 when it's published. Hopefully later this year. Matt is making progress on inks, but this is related, I guess. We'll say this. Where is it? There's a post I did just the other day. Here we go. So whenever I'm asked about the transformation of Richard and all these other guys, and you could go into like Elon Musk's, you know, the woman who, one of his surrogate moms or whatever, she had one of his kids. A lot of these people on the political pundits, they basically change. They say that they're conservative years ago, and now they're like way over like on the left. So it's like Elon Musk's whatever, his baby mama or whatever the heck. She got his son, and his son's like a year old or whatever, and she was saying that, like, I don't know all the details, but essentially like indicating that maybe she would quote unquote transition this 1-year-old, which is really disgusting and quite frankly evil. And so Elon wants to get custody of the kid because he doesn't want, you know, his wife chopping off his kid's sex organs at like 1-year-old. You know, it's like whatever. The main point is whether they're political pundits, whether there are a lot of these religious pundits, or in indie comics, they remind me of this old Web of Spider-Man cover that fascinated me when I was a kid, of Chameleon, who had basically taken over as Jonah. So, and the way that like the face was like constantly being stretched and pulled and like whatever in the boxes, it always stuck out to me. And it was very interesting. Anyway, so again, this is how I try to talk about these things, and where it's like, again, Richard, if you're listening out there, do you know how many times over the years I have refrained from delving into all of this stuff? It's like you put me in a really awkward place when you make these blanket statements about conservatives that are just disingenuous and dishonest and gross, because for whatever reason, you got mad at your audience that didn't support you in the way that you wanted to be supported. So it's just like, it's like you were mad at Marvel way back in the day, and so you were just like word vomiting on all of them and saying that they were like bad people and blah 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 blah. So then you found this other audience of conservatives, and you're like, oh, now I'm going to be able to, like, you know, they're going to embrace me or whatever. And then it's like they didn't embrace you in the way that you wanted to. They didn't like just like sign off and be like, hey, it's totally cool if you're just like 5 years late with your books or whatever it is. And so you got mad at your conservative audience, and now you're just like, well, no, F those guys too. And now I'm going to go back to saying that conservatives are bad. And actually, every once in a while, I'm still going to go off on Joe Glass and Heather Antos and Mags Massaggio. I just hate everybody. Everybody sucks or whatever. And so it's just like this endless tantrum where it's like the people that made you mad are just like villains. It's just like they're all the Joker to you now or something like that. And you're just like, okay, dude. Anyway, so I wrote, I'm sometimes asked about influencers and their penchant for having pliable ideologies. There's a chameleon type nature to many of them, whether they cover politics, religion, or indie comics. And this goes back to Comic Book Hut as well, who literally sent me once upon a time a card where he drew the chameleon on it. And then he basically turned out to be the chameleon. So then he like put out his book. And when the book didn't do as well as he wanted it to do, then all of a sudden he was just like, Doug Ernst and Iconic Comics are evil. Grah! And then he basically did the exact same thing. So all these guys have this like very chameleon type nature to them. Unprincipled people know that there's a lot of money to be made by pre-packaging themselves into nice little boxes and marketing themselves as the ideal spokesperson for any particular tribe. They also know that the internet is big enough for a total reinvention if bridges are burned or the facade cracks. My advice for anyone feeling burned by a persona is to not go too hard on yourself and simply redouble your fidelity to the truth. Put less stock in online personalities and more in the cultivation of discernment as it pertains to the truth in any given situation. So Richard completely reinvented himself. He says that he didn't do that, but there's a reason why he had to delete years and years and years of content. It's because he's not telling the truth. He's not being honest with you. Because if he did have an organic transition to a more liberal version of himself, he wouldn't have to go through and completely erase all of his previous history. Because again, if the history was actually there, you would see that this guy is dishonest or he's lying to himself, really. Like, how do I say this? I'm trying to be as charitable as possible. If he really believes that he hasn't actually just done a complete 180, he's lying to himself. Like he's just living in some sort of dream world, and he's just trying to make this little echo chamber where like everybody just tells him, no, dude, you've always been this guy. And it's like, no. And actually, if you go back to my Max Bemis stuff, I actually quote Richard, where way back in the day, Richard was like, people that, I forgot the exact quote, but it was like, people that work for Crest don't go off on people that work for Colgate or, something along those lines. And you're like, but now that's exactly what he does. He does the thing that he said, like when he was going after the industry, he was like, these industry guys, they shouldn't be going after everybody else under the sun and blah, 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 blah. And that's not how it works in a sound business. And so it's like, where's that video? Gone. Again, erased it. Because if we actually had the, Crest versus Colgate business model, it wouldn't line up with Richard basically pulling out shotguns and going after everybody who remotely irritated him for any number of reasons over the years. Let's see. They are chasing views. Student of God says they are chasing views and attention, and that's why they are chameleons. Yeah, basically. So, anyway, let's see. Hi, all. Grand Animal March here is here. The Autist Whisperer is here. Rest in peace, Scott Adams. And Dan is here. Doing good, Doug. Cool. All right. So, yeah. So, since Scott Adams is here, way back in the day. What's the date on this one? This was 2016. May 12th, 2016 was my sort of intro to Scott Adams. when he said Donald Trump will win in a landslide. The mind behind Dilbert explains why. So this was way back in the day. RQ Paints, thanks for tuning in. And I said, a friend of mine asked me earlier this week whether I thought Donald Trump would be the next president of the United States. We had a lengthy discussion on the matter. And then the next day, an old Washington Post piece showed up in my Facebook feed that covered this much of the same ground. I was amused to find out that Dilbert creator Scott Adams and I have many of the same observations about the billionaire. We agree on Trump's general strategy, but differ in terms of how successful his tactics will be in the general election. In short, Adams believes Trump will be the next president of the United States. I don't know. So he was saying that Trump understands the power of emotion in terms of influencing people, and that the power of emotion would propel him to become the president. I'm boiling that down. If you want to see the exact details, again, you could check out my old blog, May 12, 2016, douglasernst.blog. So then I said that the thing that he was not taking into account was that Trump might not be able to make more people irrationally support him than those who now irrationally hate him. So that was the thing, and we have actually seen that now play out with the ICE stuff. Is there are people that completely irrationally hate him, but because they irrationally hate him, there isn't anything you can say to these people to actually convince them that they're wrong, because it's completely emotional with them. And so if you point out the fact that, again, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reveals up to 10% of the U.S. budget is stolen every year. So if we just go to the Minnesota Somali daycare situation alone, over the course of years since like 2020, I think they said that there's been something like $9 billion worth of taxpayer money, federal dollars, i.e. American citizen tax dollars from states other than Minnesota, that have been stolen by these fraudsters, the Somali fraudsters. And so now you have ICE going in and investigating this, and the ICE agents are trying to take care of the Somali fraudsters that have defrauded the American taxpayer to the tune of like $8-9 billion plus dollars. A rational person would be like, hey, I really don't like it that these people came here under some temporary refugee status and they all set up shop, and 85+% of them have all gotten involved in various forms of Medicaid fraud and daycare fraud that's stealing billions of dollars from Americans. And they're driving around in Rolls Royces in Minneapolis, and they have these buildings that are just like essentially shacks where there's like, it's on the front, it'll be like the learning center. They can't even spell learning center right. It's not, there's no kids there. The locals that are actually around who will talk to you and be rational and be like, I've never actually seen kids around there. I just know that there's a like Learning Center, but there's actually not kids. But then if you go to the federal records and the state records, the ones that they aren't trying to hide, it shows that these people are getting millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And oftentimes what they do is they'll be in these like affluent communities, and they set it up where it's like, essentially, they're raising their own kids, but calling their house a daycare center, and then they're charging the federal, government in terms of subsidizing them to millions of dollars. And and then what they do is they get the money, and then they donate to the Democrats in the state, and the Democrats in the state know that they're getting millions of fraudulent dollars from the Somalis, but they don't care because they get the votes and then they get the power. So there's this sort of agreement between the two. Hey, we're not going to do anything. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We're just going to look the other way. Just keep voting for us. As long as you keep voting for us, you can get your Rolls Royces on the taxpayers' dime from Illinois or Texas or Florida or Minnesota and all of these sort of things, we don't care because now we're creating this giant voting block of people that we essentially imported from Somalia or, various parts of South America or Afghanistan. And you can just keep going down the list. So anyway, these people have such an irrational hatred for Donald Trump that even as he tries to root out fraudsters in their own community, they are now like protesting ICE, trying to essentially use vehicles as pseudo weapons to block their paths, essentially not paying attention. Like the lady that got killed a week ago or whatever it was, they were instigating ICE, they were blocking the cars. And then at some point in time, the agents are just like, all right, we've had enough. Get out of the car. We're going to write you up or do whatever it is for interfering with an active investigation. And that's the other thing. The ICE agents have shown time and time again that the people that they are often going after are essentially like child abusers, rapists, murderers, like all the people that have warrants out for their arrest, all of these sorts of stuff. So you have these stupid, irrational, liberal white women oftentimes who are putting their own lives in danger for rapists and child molesters and like violent criminals, drug dealers, drug traffickers, and just fraudsters and all of these people that are stealing from them. And you can't say anything if you're just like, hey, why are you using your car to block an ICE agent as he's trying to arrest a suspected murderer or a rapist? Like, do you understand that? And they're just like crying over these people. It was like there was another guy. He was like a sheriff or something. I don't know if he was Minneapolis or was it Portland? There was a gang member from Venezuela, and he was shot and killed. And you had the local cop who was crying over the violent Venezuelan gang member who was like trying to avoid capture. And you're like, what is going on with these people? At some point in time, you have to believe that like they have some sort of internal self-loathing, self-hatred. They've been so warped by propaganda over the years about Donald Trump and about America and their own country that they can't even see that they are supporting people that hate their guts and want to destroy their communities. It's very weird. Anyway, Scott Adams, again, pray for the repose of the soul of Scott Adams. So that was the thing, is apparently on his deathbed, he actually converted to Christianity, and he said he was going to give his life to Christ. And speaking of Tim from earlier, where is it? Tim put out a little tweet today. If you don't know, way back in the day, Scott Adams actually promoted, I believe it was Trump's Space Force. So, and actually, if we go back to the guy in Perch's video here, where was he? The little dishonest guy. Where is he? Where is it? Their main guy wrote night letters, and he confronted EVS over his anti-political book stance. Oh, so back in the day, it was Ethan who was bashing Trump's Space Force after Scott Adams was promoting the book. So Ethan was saying back in the day when Scott Adams and Fox Business and various other conservative radio hosts were promoting Trump's Space Force, Ethan was like, Chuck Dixon, you shouldn't be doing these books. This isn't where CG should be allotting its time, blah, 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 blah. So Scott Adams and his promotion, if I remember correctly, brought in tens of thousands of dollars worth of sales for Trump's Space Force. And it was after this, Tim, again, was minding his own business back in the day, just doing Trump's Space Force. And it was Ethan who did a stream that was bashing the book that Tim and Mark and Brett R. Smith and Chuck Dixon were doing. And so basically people were like, why is he going out of his way to bash this book and say that the book that was promoted by Scott Adams of Dilbert has no place in Comicsgate? That's really weird. It feels like out of left field to be trying to take the knees out from under Tim and Mark and Chuck Dixon and Brett R. Smith when they're literally making tens of thousands of dollars and getting on like national, radio shows and getting covered by Fox Business and Scott Adams and Jack Posobiec and all of these other guys. Like, it seems really weird. So again, all of these guys are so stupid. Like, I feel bad for them. Is they've just believed these lies that have gone on for years. It's like you have your own little narrative. But again, you want to talk about like alt accounts and stuff like that. This is very, very, very specific stuff. And it seems almost personal to this particular person. Very, very, very interesting here. So it's like, all right, who is this guy? Boom. Let's see more about the Cold Emperor here. Joined 2018, one subscriber. Very interesting. Very interesting. So anyway, seems personal to me. Who knows? Kind of hypocritical Grand Admiral March here. Seeing the Pie Man went on Timcast after crapping on Tim. Yeah, and then he also had the Trump alternate covers to his books, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like way back in the day, doing Trump Space Force promoted by Scott Adams was unacceptable to Comicsgate. But then you fast forward in time, now you're going on Timcast. Now you're doing alternate Trump covers for your books. Political parody and satire is not acceptable to Comicsgate and the pros of Comicsgate, but then we're going to do political satire and parody of Rainbow Bright books and things like that. So that's okay, but then Trump Space Force was not okay. So very interesting, very interesting. Craig, unrelated, but I bought the G.I. Joe Compendium, first 50 issues of G.I. Joe comic collected, and I thought it wasn't that good. Must need to read it as a kid. So, yeah, well, I'm sorry, Craig, that you are not a fan of the old school G.I. Joe. To each his own on G.I. Joe. Let's see. Grand Animal prayers to Scott. Hopefully his conversion is true. Oh, yeah, back to Scott. So, yeah, Scott, at the end of his life here, apparently said that he was putting his faith in Christ on his deathbed. Now, only God could read his heart, but if Scott got baptized before he died, and his heart was true with what he believed, then Scott, bravo, brother, bravo. For everybody else, though, I would not suggest rolling the dice on some level and just telling yourself that you can put off a conversion until, the last hour of your life. I would not recommend that for the vast majority of humanity, because again, God could read your heart. God knows the truth. God is living truth itself. And so he knows exactly what is in your heart. And so if you think you're going to get one over on him and be like, oh, I'm just at the, I'm going to wait until the last breath, and then I'm going to be like, Jesus, I trust in you. I would not want to do that. But with Scott, it actually, over the course of time, it seemed that he was truly touched and truly moved by the, I don't want to say tens of millions of Christians out there that were praying for him. And I actually believe that his life in many ways was extended because of the massive amount of prayers that were said for his conversion. And a lot of the things that happened with him and his treatments that extended his life and allowed him to continue to keep going, and the interventions of very, very powerful people, including the president, when he wasn't getting the health care that he needed from his provider. His insurance company was kind of giving him the runaround. They didn't want to pay for stuff and all this sort of stuff. And then Trump got involved, and a number of other people, and it was national news, and then he was able to get the treatments that he needed and all this sort of stuff. I actually believe that those prayers, the tens of millions of prayers for his conversion, extended his life long enough to work on him and work on his heart so that he would. I mean, on some level, you got to think that it's a bit of a miracle that Scott Adams, who strenuously resisted Christianity for his life, not in a mean-spirited way, but in a definite resistance, at the end of his life was basically telling Christians on a mass scale, I am very moved by your prayers. I am very moved by your conviction. And I am so moved by your conviction that before I pass away, I am going to get baptized and give my life to Christ. So like that in and of itself is a kind of, I don't think that's any small miracle. I actually think it's quite the miracle indeed. So we could only hope that Scott's heart was indeed as pure as his live streams suggested prior to his death. And again, if he was baptized shortly before his death and he really meant it, and he was handing over all of his faith and all of his questions to God and Christ to answer them, then Scott, again, bravo. And I will continue to pray for the repose of your soul. But yeah, man, very impressive on a certain level to faced with what Scott was faced with to actually turn towards Christ. So anyway, that's probably a very positive note to end on. Yeah, we covered all sorts of stuff here. Some of it's less positive, but I just wanted to kind of clear the air on a few things and let you know what I think about them, and welcome in 2026 and let you guys know. Actually, here's the funny thing. The people that want to talk about iconic comics and want to poo-poo iconic comics, I know a few things that are coming down the pike, and I hate to tell you, brothers, you're going to have egg on your face. So you might want to walk back some of that sort of stuff. You might want to refrain from taking shots at iconic comics, because I know a few things. I can't spill the beans on stuff because that would be bad. But let's just say that Iconic Comics has some stuff planned for 2026. And if you enjoy Iconic Comics, I think you're going to be quite pleased with the news. And I think you'll be quite pleased with Tim and Mark and where they're going with Common America, and where they, in their own capacity, plan on taking Iconic Comics. Actually, you know what? I will cover one more thing here. Let's just keep going. Let's see. Boop. All right. I'll give you an update on the old financial stuff here. Some of you know this. So breaking gold prices surge above record 4,600 an ounce, and silver prices surge above a record $84 per ounce amid elevated levels of uncertainty. Asset owners are winning. Now, I don't want to get into all the details here, but this is my tweet. And I've talked about, I prayed the miraculous medal, and I prayed after my old Hollywood hubbub with some producers and writers, some Hollywood guys. They wanted to exploit me. They wanted to exploit Soul Finder. I prayed the miraculous medal, and I prayed to Jesus. And I said, hey, I I gotta financially free myself from the system. And if you help me out with this, I will give glory to God. And anyway, it's through a whole, speaking of praying the miraculous metal, I had miraculous encounters that should have never happened. I will explain it in due time with receipts. I was introduced to somebody and I was like, that's it. That's the blueprint. That's it. So here's the tweet. In lieu of the financial news that's been presenting itself lately, the year is 2025. A financial Millennium Falcon is built with the long-term goal of setting up Iconic Comics for new forms of success within indie comics deep space. Leia, you're not actually going into an asteroid field. Han, they'd be crazy to follow us, wouldn't they? C-3PO, sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1. Han, never tell me the odds. It really ticks me off that I put possibility of successfully navigating the asteroid field R instead of is, but I probably got odds of successfully not navigating. Whatever. Grammatical mistake. I apologize. It's on me. But you know the scene. Empire Strikes Back. So 2025, miraculous metal. I had prayed it. Miraculous encounter with someone. I knew when I met this guy who was asking me about Christ, was asking me about the Cairo. And then he was like, hey, dude, you did me some solids and I really appreciate it. Just so you know, XYZ, I think you should look into this. And again, speaking of synchronicity and Carl Jung, you're like, what are the chances that that would happen? I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be working. I wasn't supposed to be doing any of this, but yet I'm here. And this guy in a mask appears out of nowhere asking me about the Cairo, asking me about Jesus. And then I tell him about it. And then I give him a free Cairo patch and I give him Tunnel Hounds for free. And then he's like, hey, you know, basically you were very charitable towards me. So I want you to know this. And he tells me this thing that blows my mind. And I'm like, that's it. That's the answer to my prayer. I know it. And I'm going all in because I know this is the answer to my prayer. I start looking into it. And I'm like, am I insane? Am I losing my mind? Am I just cherry picking the evidence to suit what I want? And the more I look into it, I was like, no, it's not even theory. It's happening. It's real. This is it. I'm going in. I got my financial Millennium Falcon, and this is a long-term financial spaceship that is geared towards getting Iconic Comics the success it needs to do all sorts of cool things. And as I said in my last stream, the first year of the 5-year plan, I need all these Tetris blocks to fall into place, or I needed to avoid certain asteroids, you know, or whatever, meteors. And they were all avoided. All the Tetris blocks fell into place. And now in 2026, it continues to fall in place. And if it continues going down this road, there will be signs. Again, going back to earlier, you don't need YouTube. You don't need 10,000 subscribers. All you need is to be able to think outside the box. And actually, I would highly suggest praying with all your heart and all your mind and just emptying your heart out to God and tell him what's on your mind and tell him what's on your heart and just say, listen, this is what I believe. This is what I want to do. Is this what you want me to do? I don't want to be not doing what you want to do. I want to actually do your will. Can you help me? And I'm telling you, if you empty your heart out to God on a regular basis, God will answer you. I fully believe that this is all taking shape. I know for a fact the first year everything fell into shape, and now it's January 13th, 2026, and everything has continued to fall into place. And if it keeps going on this, again, I'll keep you updated. I firmly believe that the only thing that can throw this off track at this point in time is me being a complete idiot and falling out of a state of grace and just not being humble and not telling the truth and just being an idiot. So we will see. But there will be signs. If this continues to go the way that I think it's going to, I positioned myself to where if certain things happen, and they are happening, Iconic Comics, I will be able to do all sorts of cool merch stuff. The books will be taken care of for years, and who knows what else we'll be able to do. But like I said, all the glory to God. Thank you, God. And thank you, Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. Thank you, Jesus. I appreciate it. You are awesome. And I cannot wait to tell this story when all of it comes into place, because it will be undeniable. I'm sure people think I'm crazy right now. That's fine. Think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. So, yeah. Ethereal Dragon. I find it funny how you have crazy people who think that a character needs to talk a lot, but Snake Eyes is mute and popular. I'll go back in the G.I. Joe stuff. Neo Star, if my plan works out, I may be able to fund multiple projects in the next couple of years. Very cool, man. I hope that is the case. AL is wishing everyone the best. Thanks for tuning in, AL. Dan says continued sex. Well, actually, I am married. Dan Marshall says to continued success in 2026. So let's see. Time Warrior Sagas here. Some more great things are coming that will make them rage and try to justify, file away, and rationalize to soothe their. I'm telling you, that has been the thing that has been so crazy about Iconic Comics. Again, these people have their own little, like, their little bubbles, their little echo chambers that they're in. And again and again and again, all their predictions are just blown up in like, they just, again, they keep having egg all over their face, but they continue to double and triple and quadruple down on stupidity. They're like, Eric July is going to be broke in 2024. He's going to call it quits. Well, he just raised like 90,000 or 100,000 for animation, and he's got his books going on or whatever. Iconic Comics literally going to Tokyo to shows, guest of honor stuff, putting out books. Matt Weldon is making progress on the inks. Tim and Mark have their stuff that I can't talk about that are very, 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 very cool. Hold me to it. If Tim and Mark don't announce some cool stuff this year, let me know. But I'm telling you, I'm right. I wouldn't tell you if it was a bet. I know for a fact that Tim and Mark are doing seriously cool stuff this year. And people that try to diminish their success are going to look like complete fools again, because they keep doubling and tripling down on dishonesty and stupidity. Anyways, again, Scott Adams, rest in peace, man. Thanks for everything that you did in terms of trying to fight for American principles and American ideals. So let's see. Troll Slayer. I think that's been going over old CG lore and just wanted to pop in and say, I'm glad you are doing well independently. Thanks, man. If you didn't check out Mikey No More's documentary on Comicsgate, you might want to check out that. And Elazamat has a documentary too, if I'm not mistaken. It's not like a full one like the Mikey No More, but he's got like a few things. He's got a couple of videos that are pretty solid as well. And I'm sure there's some other ones out there. Who knows? But yeah, like I said earlier, all you have to do is look at the track record of Iconic Comics and the track record of Rippaverse in terms of getting out books, merch, books, doing shows. And the track record of just actual products doing the thing that you said you were going to do, delivering on a reasonable, timely schedule that's within the ballpark of your self-imposed deadlines, you know, this, all that sort of stuff. You can just keep going down the list. I mean, you cannot argue with the books. I'm not saying you're arguing. People, like, they basically fall back on like narratives and lies from 2017 and 2018 where you're just like, I feel like if that was true, then things would not have panned out the way that you know, said they would. Like, the people that you're describing are these bizarro caricatures and none of it seems to add up, and you keep deleting streams, and you keep deleting videos, and you keep deleting tweets, and you keep hiding, your past. So the things you said, it's harder. It's really hard. People have to essentially have screenshotted the thing way back in the day and held on to it for years, knowing ahead of time that you would be proven wrong, and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, again, the track record speaks for itself. Stay tuned. Neostar, hey Doug, random question. What do you think of a priest that can transform into a grizzly bear? I don't know. It would depend on why he's transforming into a grizzly bear. How did he get these powers? What is he doing with his grizzly bearness? So yeah, but I mean, in theory, I have no opinion one way or the other than it would be nice to have the strength of a grizzly bear at your disposal. So yeah, sorry if that doesn't answer your question the way that you wanted to, but theoretically, if there was a priest and he suddenly had the strength of a grizzly bear, he could do a lot of good things with that. But if he was like the Hulk and he just started tearing apart the circus, like that obviously would not be a good thing. So who knows? Let's see. Anyway, thanks again to everybody who tuned in. Really appreciate it. If you haven't in a while, maybe check out Going to Iconic Comics. There's all sorts of books and merchandise, not just from me, but from multiple other creators. You check out theirs. If Soul Finder isn't up your alley, I'm sure you can find something that is. Anyway, thanks again. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya!